These are some of the states that have adjusted their cut scores. Alabama adjusted their cut score to a -1 standard error of measurement for the last 2 years. And they wanted to study the impact of the teachers in the pipeline. In other words, what happened to the pipeline as a result of reducing that cut score. Preliminary data indicated that over 1,000 candidates would be certified, so they were very hopeful that they would get that kind of increase. However, the implementation of the policy did not actually result the needs that they were hoping for. Kentucky, on the other hand, is in their second year of piloting a -1 standard error of measurement, and they went back retroactively and manually applied that -1 to all candidates within the last 5 years. Their implementation and the results have increased the licensure pipeline and did narrow the vacancy numbers statewide. So that's just an example of two different states that may have done the same type of situation. One saw an impact, the other did not. So again, making and taking a look at what your needs are is really important. I'd also like to share that on this particular slide for Praxis Core, so that's the assessment that measures knowledge and skills in reading, writing, and mathematics, and it's typically used as an entrance into teacher preparation. For North Dakota, what they did is they have set cut scores for the reading, writing, and math, and candidates would have to meet each of those cut scores, or they could do what's called a composite score, and then having a minimum threshold on each of them. So they have two different options. They can meet the cut score or they can combine the scores. So that's just also another way that you can adjust the cut scores. Some of the risks of adjusting cut scores may equate to lower performing teachers, which would potentially require more support at the district and school level. So keeping in mind some of the risks of these, you could get them in the pipeline, but then you increase the need of the teachers when they're in the classroom. There also sometimes is some education stakeholder pushback. Benefits are immediate impact on teacher supply. It's very quickly implemented using the current tests that you have in your state and eliminates the need for drastic policy measures. Next slide, please. So there's also flexibility and multiple measures. We're putting those together here because some states call them flexibility, some states call them multiple measures. And so we just thought I would put them all together in one bucket. Some of the states I wanted to point out is North Carolina, Connecticut, and Nevada. They all allow multiple options to Praxis Core. So that's that one that I just discussed on the previous slide that is typically used for entrance into a teacher program. So some of the other things that the states are looking at are SATs, ACTs, grade point average, or the assessment. Connecticut also allows preparation programs to use the Praxis Core as a diagnostic rather than as a test for entrance. So taking a look at what the candidate's needs are and then filling up those area of weaknesses. In regards to the actual content knowledge, I wanted to focus on a couple there as well. Oregon allows for, actually not yet, yeah, thanks. Oregon allows various options for demonstrating content knowledge. They actually have quite a few. They either use the subject matter test, they also use undergraduate or graduate degree in that actual endorsement area with a GPA requirement and a semester credit count requirement. They also allow the test, and if they didn't actually score high enough, they can use some supplemental data to beef up the content area to demonstrate that. And they also do have a holistic assessment of experiential records. The last time I checked with Oregon, they didn't have any candidates that used that particular assessment at the time. Massachusetts allows candidates who score within one standard error of measurement of the licensure test to demonstrate competency by providing additional evidence. And Kansas, they just started this, I want to say within the last few months, and they actually allow, they have a process that allows specific individuals to file a content test appeal. So, in order to qualify for that option, the candidates must have completed a Kansas state approved educator preparation program. So, that means they had to be prepared in Kansas. Um, they would not have passed the required content exam. They had to at least try twice, and they have to be employed in Kansas. So what they can do is they can apply for an appeal, and the evidence that is used is GPA, so their grade point average. They will take a look at the content exam score, their best score on their attempt, and then the district evaluation of content knowledge. They put all of that evidence together in a licensure review committee that consists of appointed teachers, school administrators, and college faculty. They conduct an interview with that candidate. They review the documentation, and then they make a recommendation to approve or not approve the appeal. If the appeal is to recommend, it's ultimately the Kansas State Board of Education for the final approval. So some risks in the flexibility in multiple measures, especially if I've described some of them to you, they might be difficult to combine and interpret. Choosing the measures to implement is really important. And then the implementation and scalability may be challenging, right? There's a lot of extra work that comes with a lot of those options. The benefits, though, are candidates can take advantage of the different pathways to licensure. Multiple measures may paint a better picture of a particular measure and then increase the teacher supply. Next slide, please. On this last one, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Christy, because this is more of like a holistic approach, and I really love for her to be able to share what Montana has done for a while. So, Christy?
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christy Steinberg, and I've worked in licensure and accreditation at the University of Montana for about 16 years. And actually, some of this work that we've been doing predates that time. So what you're looking at on your screen is what we kind of refer to as our multiple measure of assessment for content knowledge. This goes back to No Child Left Behind. So some of you that are as old as me in the room remember those days. And really where this started was when we were being told you have to require a test, and Montana's like, we're not requiring a test. And they said, you are, we're not. And we landed at this multiple measure, which was ultimately approved by the Department of Education. And so the idea here is that this is looking at different measures of the same construct. So in this case, we are looking at knowledge of your content area as a teacher. And these become a series of ands. So you have to do all of these things, which then come together to give you a score. Just kind of for the record, again, this is content. We look at pedagogy in a different way when we look at this from the educator prep program side of things. So when this went into effect in 2006, we started with elementary education. We then added minors in subject areas, and minors lead to licensure in Montana, as well as majors. And then we added all content areas. So we've been doing this with all content areas at Montana's educator prep program since 2013. So that includes public, private, and tribal institutions in the state. So what you're looking at is 3 different measures. We look at their content specific GPA, not cumulative, but what is your content in your coursework. We look at an assessment done during student teaching or a clinical experience, depending on the program of study. And the teacher and a university supervisor are looking at how well are you applying that content knowledge in the classroom. So it's a performance-based assessment in that component. And then we have the praxis subject assessment. And what you'll see is that you have to have 7 points total, 10 possible on this measure, and you have to have at least 7. You cannot have a 0 in anything, so you can't choose not to do one of them, but you have to have at least a score of 1. And if you do have a score of 1, that becomes an individualized program level review, very similar to what Lisa described, where we look at the candidate in more detail about their experiences and their background and what led to their point total in here. And if they have at least 7 points on here, they're receive the recommendation for licensure coming out of that educator prep program.